I'm pleased to be joined by author, biblical researcher, and historian Ralph Ellis. Ralph, one of the most enduring and often misunderstood event locations in the biblical lexicon is Mount Sinai. Can you please provide any information on this important biblical setting?
Yeah, well, this is another of these oddities within the whole of the biblical narrative, where these essential components of their history are missing. And this is very strange because the Jews record everything. You know, every prince, every queen, every prostitute, every event that was going in this era. And then they lose their sacred mountain. Very strange, isn't it? And so they point at various mountains in the Sinai Peninsula. But you could never get 500,000 people living in the Sinai Peninsula for more than 4 days, let alone 40 years, because it's a desert. They would die. So this event needs interpretation. It didn't happen as advertised. So what was happening here? Well, we have an exodus out of Egypt. We had a big first exodus. We had a small second exodus, which was the exodus of Akhenaten and the people of Amarna. And they were coming out of Egypt. Now, if you look at the ancient records, even Josephus actually, when he says Egypt, he's normally talking about Upper Egypt. He's talking about Thebes and Karnak. He is not talking about Lower Egypt. And so these people were coming out of Egypt and they go to Mount Sinai. And these are Egyptian people, fully Egyptian in the sense that the Hyksos were and Akhenaten was. So where is Mount Sinai? Where is there a mountain within Egypt? This is why people keep pointing at the Sinai Peninsula, because there are no mountains within Egypt. So where is there a mountain within Egypt that is sacred? Well, the answer is obvious, isn't it? The sacred mountain is the Great Pyramid of Giza. And so that's what Mount Sinai is. Mount Sinai is the Great Pyramid. And again, I can't go through all the evidence. We don't have time here, but I'll give you a couple of examples of the evidence. The first one is that at the bottom of Mount Sinai, it says, within the Torah, it says there was a pavement, a black pavement that looked like the night sky. And it was so flat and smooth, you had to take your shoes off before you went on it. So where would you find a mountain that had a black, smooth pavement that looked like the night sky? Well, again, the answer is the Great Pyramid of Giza, because if you go on the eastern face of the Great Pyramid, you will find the great black basalt pavement, which lay on the eastern face of the Great Pyramid, and it does indeed look like the night sky. So this is what they were talking about, and this explains so much, because this is the beauty of this set of re-evaluations of biblical history, because it starts explaining things. You know, it's not causing problems, it's explaining problems that were never explicable before. You could never get 500,000 people in the Sinai Peninsula for 40 years. They would die within 4 days. This explains what they were doing. They were at Sinai, and they were having a final ceremony there, circling the mountain, as it says in the Torah, circumnavigating the mountain, before heading off on their exodus. And this circumnavigation, of course, is still performed at the Kaaba in Mecca, of course, where they have the great circumnavigation of the Kaaba when they go on their Hajj. It was an old type, very traditional type of celebration within these ancient religions, because what they were doing, and don't tell the Muslims this, but what they are doing at Mecca is they are imitating the stars and the planets and the motion of the cosmos around the celestial equator. So the Kaaba is the center of the earth, as it were, the celestial pole, and all of the stars, all of the people rotate around the Kaaba. It's a depiction, if you stood above it on one of the minarets, you would see a depiction of the night sky with all the people rotating around. And I was saying that this theory explains things, and it explains this 40 years phenomena. What's this 40 years all about? We have this number 40 crops up all the time. You know, Moses was in the wilderness for 40 days and nights, and Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days and nights, and the Israelites were in Sinai for 40 years, and all this sort of business. What does it all mean? Well, again, we have to be slightly lateral and we have to be slightly logical about this. Don't take things at face value. You cannot be 40 years in the wilderness in Sinai. What it means is that the people who we are discussing and the events we are discussing are connected with the Great Pyramid. It's a sign of initiation. If you say your age is 40 or you were 40 days in the wilderness, it's a sign of initiation, that you were initiated into the Masonic secrets of the Great Pyramid. And the great secret of the Great Pyramid, well, not that it's a big secret today, of course, but it certainly was then, is that the Great Pyramid is a 40 times copy of pi. So if you get pi, the fractional equivalent, of course, 22 over 7, multiplied by 40, you get the dimensions of the Great Pyramid. And that's what they were talking about when they keep invoking the number 40 in their narrative. It was symbolic of the Great Pyramid. And so we doubly know now that Mount Sinai was the Great Pyramid. And of course, this makes so much more sense of the story. They were coming out of Egypt. That's Amana, sort of in central Egypt. And they were going northwards past Giza on their exodus and then ending up wherever they ended.